Last year, 2020, in February, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. At the time, our country had not reported any case. Barely a month later, uh, in March of the 22nd, Uganda got her first case. From that time, government took the measures that actually everyone else was taking, but very stringent, that included, number one, a total lockdown in the country and standard operating procedures that effectively sought to disperse all points that gather people. These included places of worship, markets, but important for this conversation today, closure of schools. Of course, later, as the numbers reduced and as the country was applauded for dealing with COVID-19 in a better way, the country tried to open. This, like the young people nowadays like to say, ended in tears as we found ourselves losing so many people. And particularly for schools, many students were found to be sick, and some institutions were actually accused of hiding cases of COVID-19. As we speak today in the country, as you are all aware, there is a total lockdown and all institutions of learning have been closed. What is the impact of this? On one hand, of course, learning has not been happening. We now have heard of students who are now going into their third year without progressing in their respective classes. But more than just the normal educational progress, this means that many teachers, many lecturers, non-academic staff, and the entire value chain that sustains and supports the education sector was brought to a standstill. So you're talking unemployment, and you're talking effects, ripple effects on the entire economy. Today, this afternoon, to discuss the effects of COVID-19 and the measures to curb COVID-19, like lockdowns on the education sector, we have a very diverse panel. As usual, the Youth Roundtable on CIVICspaceTV. I'm glad, first of all, to host Dr. Deus Kamunyu. Dr. Deus Kamunyu, we are very glad to have you on this show. Dr. Deus is the chairperson of MWASA, which is the Staff Association of Makerere. So when I'm talking unemployment and all that, and the academic staff, Dr. Deus is going to put that in perspective. We are also joined by Her Excellency Mariam Arikosi, the EU President of Mara University of Science and Technology, which is in the news for giving us what some have described as a cure for COVID-19. Your Excellency Mariam, we are very glad to have you on the Youth Roundtable. We are also joined by His Excellency Odul Felix. Odul Felix is the Guild President of Busitama University. Your Excellency, we are glad to have you on board. And true to the culture of the roundtable, to make sure we have inclusion of all voices, we have a senior citizen party from Mengo SS, Miss Petra Namatovu. Namatovu, we are very happy to have you on the Youth Roundtable. We are going to be joined by Dr. Jova Yarugawa, the proprietor of Ebenezer Schools. Not yet here, they are going to join us. So my panel, we are very excited to have you. The country is watching. We know that COVID-19 and the attendant measures have had a huge impact on our communities and has escalated some of the challenges we already had, like teenage pregnancies, like gender-based violence. So to start us off, I'm going to allow each one of you 3 minutes, since you all sort of represent an institution in the education sector, to just tell us what has happened on your end, individually and the institutions you represent. How have you been affected by COVID-19 and the measures to curb it? I'm going to start with Your Excellency Mariam Ichlet from MAST.
Thank you very much for having me. I am Mariam Ichulet Arikosi, the Guild President of Murray University of Science and Technology, and a final year student pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Gender and Applied Women Health. I say I'm a finalist with great doubts because in my university, by the time the lockdown was executed in Uganda, we had not finished our final exams for semester two, semester one of third year. So when the lockdown was instituted, definitely, as all institutions, we had to follow the guidelines and rules set by the government, and our university had to close. But having faced the challenges of the first lockdown and the time that we lost as an institution, as students, my institution deemed it fit for us to continue as we had in light of the first lockdown with online education. So on 28th June 2021, we proceeded with semester two academic planning.
Sorry, your
Yes,
network.
please.
Your network is.
Pardon?
Your network is breaking. Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, we seem to be having issues with your network, but it looks like it has stabilized now. Maybe you can submit and we see how it goes.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm not sure where it began getting faulty from.
Well, we had already had the effect on how you are not sure you're a finalist and some of the steps that your university took.
Okay. Yes. So in my university, we have currently proceeded with semester two of the academic calendar for 2021-2022. Even without having finished the final exams for semester one. And this was brought into perspective from the previous experiences that we had had from the first lockdown, where the uncertainty, the lack of knowledge, and just the lack of knowledge of what's to come made us lose almost a year. So we proceeded as we speak right now with online learning. And of course, online learning has brought into place very many challenges, where as we are all in our different areas of origin across the country, the issues of electricity distribution in the country has challenges in the country has come to play. The issues of households not having devices to accommodate the online learning of the various children that they have, the resources required to purchase data. As you well know, after having removed OTT tax, our government added a 12% tax on data. This all has come to really devastate very many students who are really committed and willing to proceed with their academic progress as usual. So as we are trying to find solutions to help some of the students in my university, because we are aware that very many students may not attend lectures diligently as they would have, we are trying to have recorded lectures which will be shared with students so that they can easily catch up with the missed lectures. But even while some of these issues are being put in place, there are still several challenges which the institution alone cannot solve. We need the support of the government. We need to see improvements in, because even in the 2014 stated that education is the key tool to bring about economic growth, social growth, and prosperity. But the investment is.
Yeah. So, sorry, I don't know whether the network is just showing us an example of the challenges of online learning. But your network is bad. I've been advised that maybe you switch off your video. If the bandwidth is small, it should accommodate audio. So let's try to do it audio and see. But also, your 3 minutes have almost elapsed, so maybe you conclude.
I request that we go to the next speaker as I try to sort this out. Maybe I should change telecom lines
All right,
if
all right,
that's a
all right.
challenge.
Fair enough, fair enough. Good suggestion. And I'm now going to come to you, Petra. We have heard, though with a bad network, about the experience of what you would say university students. I'm just wondering what the case is for a Vakist uh, trying to lean backwards to see what's happening in high school and also how this has affected you personally. Yeah, thank you, Petra.
Oh, thank you so much, sir, for that introduction. So when we got the first wave of COVID and the schools were locked down in the first instance, we saw the first weeks and the second weeks the teachers were so active. They would send work on social media, they would share notes, they would organize lessons via Google Meeting and all and on Zoom. But meanwhile, as the length of the lockdown increased and the speed and the enthusiasm that teachers were using to teach reduced, we realized that the teachers stopped sending in notes. They were no longer checking on us, the meetings were not happening. And the worst case scenario was the fact that most students gave up on education. Most of them went into business, they started selling masks, we started engaging in very, very many different things, we opened up shops. So we realized that by the time we reached the second month of the lockdown, people were no longer interested in education, not the teachers, not the students. But then some teachers kept on sending work, but what was on returning to school, because we were the candidates of the time, we went back to school, and on checking notes, it's only attendance of the class who had done the work, the little work that was sent to us. So you realize that this lockdown and the fact that people are living in different societies, we are living with different parents who have different opinions about education. Some didn't do the work because of data, because of motives, because of engaging probably in businesses. And then what was more shocking was the fact that in my school, Mango Senior School, a very prominent school, you realize that we also had return to married, some pregnant. Now that's happening in school, urban area shows us what's actually happening but in rural areas, in schools where there is no much monitoring. The fact that we were being monitored, we had our teacher always checking on us, but people were here, there is no work, nothing is done, and even some teachers didn't return. So they were telling us, you know what, it was such a long period, turn to business, they turned to something else. So personally, I think it was it affected the way we were taking education, because before the lockdown we looked at education as our only path to making it to the world, to making it to the top. But after the lockdown, we realized that people now had mixed emotions. Some were thinking about business, some were, if we're able to survive without education for these 6 months, we can still do it. People now had different perspectives. And the first few weeks, even after returning to school, people were not yet settled. People were thinking about their businesses, what they had started, what's now happening at home. So I find that the COVID lockdown and the closure of schools had a very, very big impact on us as students. The morale, the visions, the dreams we had, it somehow tried to take us away from that path. And not only to us, to the teachers and to our parents, because some parents were like, you are doing well at home, because we have colleagues who didn't come back, and they're like, no, mommy was like, let me just keep the family business because it's doing well, there's no future there. And you realize that it was even hard being able to cope up with all the pressure. I was a science student in my BCM. You realize that we had covered a very tiny bit of the syllabus. Now the fact that we had to come back to school and be pumped with all of this, the teachers themselves had no morale. You could see a teacher could be in class, then they get a call, because you realize that they had to get an alternative business during the lockdown in order to survive. So I personally think that the lockdown had more and more to do to our psychological effect and to what we envision education to be. and it made many students lose morale. And I'm so scared that the fact that now the children are back home, the ones who had gone back to school, I feel like the more this continues, the more they're going to lose the meaning of education, the more they're going to see world from a different perspective. And that's not right, because when they think, when they're at home and they're earning something, they're getting money from this and this, they think that's all that the world has to offer. They forget what they get in school. At the end of the day, they don't want to go back, they don't want to read. And personally, that has been one of the most biggest challenges of the lockdown on education in Uganda.
Okay, thank you, Petra. I'll be coming back to probe you on some of the experiences you've shared. But allow me now cross to His Excellency Odul Felix. We have heard from Barara, we have heard from Mengo. How is it in Tororo? We actually earlier on told us you are in Bali. At Busitema University, which is basically a science-based university, have you also had these very challenges, or being scientists, you have got ways of skirting around the issue? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, moderator. First of all, for introduction again, once more, I'm Odu Felix, the Guild President of Busitema University, usually called the political vibrator. I have a blueprint slogan, doing the ordinary extraordinarily. I'm a finalist, a medical student doing bachelors of medicine and surgery. I really want to say that COVID-19 being a health pandemic, little did we know it would affect the education and academia to a very devastating extent. I want to start on the note of COVID-19 came on board and it has shaken the whole education system, right from kindergarten, primary, secondary, tertiary institution, and right now, the universities. Personally, when this lockdown came, right now, I should have already graduated as a doctor from Busitema University. My admission already has expired, the duration whereby the academic registrar expected me to finish my education, but I'm still in school. That's what COVID has brought. We faced a scenario whereby we were almost going to have 3 lots of first-year students. This time, we got to know that a first year is different from a fresher. And then already adverts are out for 2021, 2022. And we were almost going to face a scenario where we have 3 sets of first years. But currently, we've progressed to our second semester, effective 5th of July, just this Monday. We started the second semester. I would like to state it that being a science university, science cannot be done virtually. That's why I would like also to put the different stakeholders on the spot right now. Science is more practical than theoretical. We've embraced the online education, which has its own challenges. But how will I learn how to go and interact with the patient on the phone? The experiences are very different. Let me leave that. The issue of cost of education has more than doubled. The students are paying tuition, and right now the students have to also pay data, which is very expensive. I would also like to put telecommunication companies at the moment on the spot and government. We need to collaborate. We need a multi-sectoral approach in this. The telecommunication companies should come up with data packages, student-friendly packages that can enable university, because COVID-19 has come and it has made us adopt virtual learning. On the other negative part of it, most people are only talking about academia. What of sports? We have seen sporting activities or curricular activities across the education sector put to a standstill. Primary, they usually have those traditional folk songs. Post-primaries of athletics have not happened. What are we talking about it? Inter-university games have not happened. This is all due to COVID-19. Education is both sports and academics. We cannot only do this part of learning without play. We shall be very dull. And finally, COVID has come up with, I was looking at UCC statistics, only 16% of Ugandans are able to have smartphones, which is the cheapest level of accessing online platform, leave alone the computer or the iPads. That means only 16 out of 100 Ugandans are able to access computer. Or a smartphone. If I break it down, it means only three out of 20, if I bring it to the students, are able to access a smartphone. What of the majority, the 17, how are they going to learn, even if we have embraced this? COVID has really stated the fact that education is now for the rich and not for the poor. There is a light note I was trying to look at. The effects are both positive and negative. Maybe one positive effect, it has skyrocketed the digital migration of Uganda. And right now, I would also like to put government on notice. We need to integrate ICT as a must in our basic, elementary, and higher education of learning. I beg to submit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your introductory remarks have been very elaborate. You have actually answered some of the questions I was seeking to ask you at the end. But allow me now to cross to our special guest, Dr. Kamunyu. Doctor, you are the chairperson of Makerere University Academic Staff Association. We have heard from the students and how they have been affected. Of course, they have also, in a way, spoken for you in the way they have spoken about teachers and lecturers. But let's hear from the horse's mouth. How has COVID-19 and the lockdown affected academic staff, especially?
Good afternoon to you. I hope you're able to hear me and see me, maybe.
We can hear you clearly. We don't see you yet.
Yeah. I've turned on the video. Okay, I turn it on now.
Yes, perfect.
I hope you can be able to see me now. So I'm in lockdown, so you'll bear with my not very professional. Education traditionally and in every way of life in society has never been easy. It's never been easy to educate children even in normal times. Because in normal times, children do not only go to school to study, but also they must go there when they are properly nourished, when
Oh, doctor, your network. I guess we may have to dispense with
well planned, must be given interruption. So, hello, can you hear me?
For a moment, we are not hearing you, but that now we had. So maybe you can proceed and receive. But if it persists, then I'll let you. I will tell you such that you just switch off the video and we do the audio.
Yes. I was saying that education has never been easy to administer or to deal with in society, even in good times. Education has its own dictates. Children do not only go to school, but children also have to be enabled to eat well. They must be healthy, and they must be given good sanitation. They must be safe, must feel safe, and their homes must also be safe haven for them to have the kind of mind that is needed for education to take place. And so, if then it is very difficult for education to take place in good times, what about when it's bad times? And I'm comparing education in a setting of war and an education in a setting of a pandemic. Actually, I can compare these two successfully. A state of war and a state of pandemic have a relationship. And how do they relate? The two generally tend to affect social programming. And social programming is the process of training individuals in society on expected and approved behavior by society or approved way by society. And so usually wars and pandemics affect these grossly. So I want us to complain from the basis of these fundamentals that war and pandemics affect communities and societies grossly to an extent that education is always the first to suffer because it's never been easy still to educate people in society. And how does this affect society at large? For example, many parents have lost their jobs and their means for an income. That's number one, is for sure. And there are also aspects of social distancing, for example, that have complicated class organization and hampered economies on the extent that they have to mount more resources to educate as before. Let's say, for example, if we needed 10 billion to educate, now we need close to 30 billion to educate. So this is very complicated. The third is that there are challenges now, new learning methodology, distance learning, access to internet. Remote learning is not so easy to implement because access to internet is very key in remote learning, modern remote learning. And it also must come with the right signal. The internet must be very strong. The young people must have the gadgets to use, for example, at higher education. And they must also be provided with an enabling environment for them to be able to learn without interruption. At home, remember. But what is at home is what we should concentrate. Do these young people have the right environment at home to learn even online? Even if they say internet was not a problem. The domestic violence, issues of domestic violence, issues of even lack of space. For example, children who live in ghettos, rural areas. And I'm about to say something here. We have about 20 million of our children going to school. That is from pre-primary to post-secondary. Half of our population go to school. We have majority of our young people between primary and secondary. About 60% of those 20 million children are between primary and secondary. That's the age of 6 to 24. And we have about 19.2 of these children going to post-secondary, that is college and university. And so, and most of these children, majority of these children are in rural areas. So there is evidence that majority will be affected. About 14 million of these children are in rural areas. They have no access to internet. They have no space to learn. Even if you talk of TV or radio, the majority have no these gadgets. Most straight to school in the early days when we were okay, but now they may not even be reason to trek there, even when we open. And I am predicting, this is in my own wisdom and from what I've been reading over this period, that about 20 to 30% of our children are going to drop out of school even when we open. They had already dropped about 20 to 30% of these young people, which is a significant number, will drop out of school at the end. So the impacts are real on our education, and it's premised on the fact that this is a state of war, almost. And I don't want anyone to take it lightly and joke. This is a state of war. We can talk about how government is handling this war, but everyone should know that this is a state of war, and you expect massive impairment of all systems, and specifically social programming, which is a whole totality of our education system, including formal and informal education. And we are also talking about the family's ability, because our education system often divorces family from participating meaningfully in our education. So this has even worsened. Parents do not know how to educate their children, for example, if they really get these tasks to teachers, which is a huge mistake. At a later stage, I will talk about the advantages of this pandemic. Maybe for now, I can stop there, and maybe if there are leading questions, I answer.
Yes. Well, you actually gave the effect on society. I think my question to you was very restrictive, but you've opened it up. I will be, of course, coming back to you on the specific impact on the teaching staff or on instructors. But ladies and gentlemen, we are glad to have been joined by Dr. Jova. I see from here that Dr. Jova Rugaba has joined us. Dr. Jova, like I mentioned earlier, is the proprietor of Ebenezer Schools. Dr. Jova, are you able to hear me?
Yes, please. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes. I know that you are following part of the discussion, though you joined a bit late. But we are also aware that as proprietors, you are a group that is one of those that have been worst hit by the pandemic. Could you maybe within about 3 minutes share with us exactly what has happened from the end of a proprietor of an academic institution? How has this pandemic and its measures been like on your end?
Yeah, as a proprietor and an educationist, this has really hit us so much. There is financial distress resulting from the restructured and non-profiting performing schools. There has been loans, and now without children in schools, many schools have been sold. If you watch TV or you follow news in any social media, some schools have been turned into rentals. Some schools have been turned into, poultry farms. So it's very bad. And some schools, they are being taken by banks because schools had bank loans. Some had money from money lenders. Some have been really hit because some schools have children who are being funded. And because this has been a global problem, the funders have withdrawn because they have also been hit. So you can see the problem. One, the children can't access schools. Their funders have been cut off. Some, their parents have died. Their sponsors have died. Others are sick. So as proprietors, we are, especially of private schools, because while the government schools, the government is still paying teachers their salaries. The private schools, teachers are vending for themselves. And it's going to be very difficult for some teachers to come back on board because they are out there. You saw someone who has gone into making chapati, some are making bricks, some,
Yes.
So we are going to find a problem having our human resource maintained.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be coming back to you for more experiences, but also exchanging thoughts on how we can deal with the situation. But now, if I can go back to Mariam, have you now sorted your technology?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, this obviously sounds better. Of course, earlier on you had given us on what has happened and how you have been affected as students and some of the interventions that the university has taken to check the situation. But if I can now elevate that to the national level, you know that government, especially through the Ministry of Education, came out with different ways to show how they can mitigate the effects. And government announced a number of interventions. Some of them we had our sister here, Petra, speak about. I would want to know at the level of the university and at the level of MAST, have there been any government interventions to mitigate the effects? And if so, how effective have these been?
Well, at the level of mass, and I believe very many, all public institutions that have begun studies, the most that I know that the government is doing to support universities or students is that they have maintained their commitment to facilitate government students and provide for them their living out allowances, even during this time for schools that have opened, and equally providing the routine support to government institutions. But in light of the unprecedented and new emerging expenses that universities like mine are facing, there are still challenges with mobilizing even more resources for some of the things that we are facing. For example, you find that very many institutions, the government ones, are utilizing learning management systems, which learning management systems, I must confidently say, are not up to date to the current situation, where you find that in MAST, the LMS, which is the learning management system that we use, basically only accommodates about 2 MBs to 3 MBs upload of data, and that is for a multidisciplinary institution with different programs of different types. That's a lot of work that cannot be uploaded. So in very many government institutions, we are highly relying on private software like Zoom for virtual classrooms, which is highly consumptive in data. So our LMSs, which probably would be less data consumptive, do not provide the standard service that students would ideally need to access their academic classrooms or even e-resources. So you're highly dependent on private systems like Zoom. And these are systems that not only are students learning to navigate, but even the lecturers themselves. So we are finding scenarios where both lecturers and students are teaching themselves, are facing challenges that cannot be helped. For example, lecturers would probably have to go to their offices to maybe have access to the university internet. but we all know that that is not health appropriate for them, because they may too expose themselves to the COVID-19 disease. So very many are reluctant to go to their different offices, but leave alone that they have gone back to their rural areas. So with the limited mobility, limited movement, even just moving across different places is very, very hard. So the issues that are faced by our lecturers, faced by our management, trickles down and becomes a snowball effect on the students, whereby it's even much, much worse. And the main issue that we are facing is we cannot access our universities. Our universities have different services that probably would have helped us to best navigate this pandemic and have access to e-resources. But because we are in different rural areas across the country, these are areas where the universities themselves may not be able to reach, and we are highly dependent on the nation, on the government. So even while, yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. But judging from your tone, you seem to suggest that government could have done more or could do better.
Absolutely, I cannot stress that enough.
Yeah. So as you stressed us, maybe you would share with us some of the interventions you think or you would have expected government to focus on.
Yes, first and foremost, we would have expected government to really make the access of data, of e-resources like data, highly affordable to students, or even completely free to students to access education. So putting more taxes, putting more expenses on students, on people who even before these taxes were having challenges accessing data. Putting these expenses is only making it much worse. So we would have expected governments to form different partnerships with telecommunication companies, with the universities, with different funders who they are reaching out to for different things, to find accessible, affordable, and even free resources for students. These students, their data can easily be collected, their numbers can easily be collected through us, the guild, through the university, and they can be helped to find this data. Leave alone that, just like one of our previous speakers spoke of, there is a very big issue of finding access to these gadgets that we need. A survey from the National IT Department in 2018-2017 showed us that in a household, you'll find that to have internet access in a household, it's about 10.8% in the entire country. And even just to have a gadget, it's about 6.9% for at least one member. So clearly there is a huge gap where people do not have access to these different gadgets that maybe at campus, you can say that go to the computer lab, go to all the different resource centers. We don't have that access now. So government needs to find a way of getting different e-centers in different districts, in different rural areas, where people can come together and actually access the internet, access the network. And not only just providing data to students, there is network connectivity in different areas. Earlier when I was speaking, you could not hear me clearly. I had different network challenges. And I believe this is the same or even much worse for different students. Government needs to take this seriously. They need to spread the network connectivity throughout the entire country. Let alone that, when we go to electricity distribution, even though you gave me network, even though you gave me data, even though you gave me a smartphone, if I do not have electricity, of what use will that smartphone be to me? You find that... Yes, please.
From what I've heard so far, all the recommendations you've made would require government using money. But we know that, when the economy has been brought down, government that also relies on revenue from the population can hardly also collect the same. And our country is already struggling with a huge loan portfolio. Where do you think government can get money to undertake, for example, some of the infrastructure suggestions you're making that are very heavy on capital?
Yes. One thing I would like to equally bring to light is that very many of these very many of these establishments, what we can say has been a disservice to all of us, should have at least already been in place or already put into, put into establishment in different areas. So for a country like ours, which has for so long said that they want to digitalize the country, they would like to have more electricity distribution in the entire country, we have not seen significant progress in that. There have been different strides that have been taken successfully, which we highly appreciate, but I would like to really say that we have not seen the significant strides that would have brought this to reality. You realize we are in the second wave lockdown. This is the second lockdown. So in the first lockdown, one would assume that we were not prepared. We were unaware of some of the things that were affecting the education system. But we had an experience in the first lockdown, and we should have put in place systems that would have put us in a better position to solve these challenges. Even before the second lockdown, the government was telling people that we are going to have a second wave. Even before the national elections, a second wave was spoken of. So this should not be a surprise. This should not be a surprise to our government. There are so many funds being brought to book, COVID-19 relief for different people, but I have not had COVID-19 relief fund for education for students. I have not heard of that. And this is a country that, if you really look at our 2040 vision, education is seen as one of the most pragmatic ways of bringing about social, economic, and political growth. But whenever investments, whenever funds are being mobilized for different things, hardly do you see education being prioritized. Even more, we see different taxes being imposed on an education system that now highly relies on data. And leave alone that there have not been any stimulus packages or waivers. We are still paying the same tuition, So ideally, we would assume that tuition, that money is now going to be channeled to these spaces that actually require investment. We need transparency. So it's really disheartening.
Yeah, thank you, Mariam. I love the passion with which you speak. Indeed, you are part of the student movement. But I fear I was tempted to let you go on and on. But I have a bigger panel, and at this point, allow me hear from the other colleagues. But your suggestions for the intervention the government can make are well received. Thank you very much. I will now cross to His Excellency Odul Felix. Odul, the case that Mariam has made largely is talking about digital interventions. Earlier on, we heard from you that out of 20, you only have about 3 people have capacity to access internet. So I don't know how these two propositions can tally. So from your end, do you also agree that the way to go, just like many people seem to suggest, is to go digital, or do you have any alternative thoughts? And as you answer that, I would like also to hear from you on whether there have been any government interventions that you've come across and how effective they have been.
Thank you so much, moderator. Yeah, I would like to agree with the previous speaker who highlighted a number of challenges. Just as I mentioned, right now we do not have any excuse to go virtual, to go online, to go digital across all sectors. I'm highly in agreement with that. The 3 out of 20 is derived from a national survey. UCC talked of 16% of households having smartphones. That means the academia is not spared. I was just breaking down that statistics to the perspective of a student. I'm glad we are here with one of the senior educationists, Dr. Kanyamunyu Mwezi, and I believe
yes.
Yes, I believe he has been at the forefront. I've always seen him on TV. Thank you so much as the chairperson of MWASA. What I would like to say is that there is nothing that has been done so much in terms of infrastructure for ICT. ICT is becoming more of a basic need than a necessity for our education sector to survive. When I talk of the infrastructure, what is the government agenda on ICT to ensure all universities have a student ratio to computer? It should be 1-to-1. But right now, if we look at that ratio of student to computer ratio in the universities, it is laughable. Personally, we have about 100 computers. These are 100 computers to serve a population of 4,000 students. That means, look at that statistics. So that shows you where the problem is. First of all, we need the computers. Then the second thing, we need to expedite training of computer experts. Every course at the moment needs a computer expert. Every office and department needs a computer expert. Even Guild itself in the Dean of Students office needs a computer expert so that we can navigate through this. Let me come to data. I made a mention of it. One thing the university has gone to do in regard to this is to zero rate, to ensure that university resources are zero rated. Our university took it on with Airtel, whereby you can be able to access LMS, what my colleague was talking about, the learning management system, at free cost. That is, if you're there, you only need to ensure you're a student with your registration number, and you can access that platform freely. But there is a challenge. If you only zero rate a quarter of the students, have you done something? You're showing you want to do something good, but a quarter of the students, it has not yet addressed it has not addressed anything. Internet, even if internet is provided, what of the bandwidth strength? Issue of connectivity we are struggling with, because the bandwidth the country has is very low. You find that we are at about 30 to 50 Mbps. These are very low to support virtual learning, where my video has to be on, at least to provide that reality in education. Therefore, I want us to take this head on. The telecommunication companies, they should not wait for government to come to them. It's a public-private partnership. They should move also to government and say we are coming in to solve, not only give billions of money to provide food. No, right now, our senior lecturer said that about 20 million of students are in school. Yes, we are hungry, but right now the problem is we need data to ensure we are online. If we go that direction, then I believe we shall be moving in the right direction as a country. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Excellency Odur. I'm tempted to cross over to you, Dr. Kamunyu. The young leaders here are proposing what sounds like boom, if we can get back into the history of education in Uganda. You know, talking about gadgets, talking about data, free data, and we don't have someone speak for government here, but I'm sure one of the arguments would be that we are in a free market economy, and government may not necessarily be able to work on network infrastructure and all the like. How do you speak to this, Doctor? What can be done? And I would like also for you to comment on the suggestions by the young leaders.
Maybe a little back to where I stopped and I could not reach. I was founding my point that education has been rendered difficult. We are in a war situation. And what happened? this is where I wanted to go, but I felt I had taken more space. We were one day at school, and overnight we were told to go away to be at home. There was a quick shift, and that quick shift meant that we had to transition from physical learning, which we are used to with our very old British system of learning, and with low adaptability to online education, to online education. We weren't ready. His Excellency from Busema is talking about computer student ratio. We are now talking about a situation where we are talking about in a school situation when we are at home physically, but now we are talking about it in reality of whether the students who are now at home have the necessary gadgets to learn versus teachers also. Do they have these gadgets to learn? And my experience is, yes, we could be having these gadgets as teachers, but they are not university gadgets. They are personal gadgets. And as employees, we are entitled to tools to teach. And these tools were not readily available at that time. We just went to school and we were told to go back, just in a single moment, in a matter of moments. So there was a quick shift, and that's a fact, and we faced it to go home. And we've had first round of lockdown. Now this is the second round of lockdown. Then the other that I see, I'm at home, and then I have to juggle stuff with my own children, and I have to attend to children of someone else. And this is also very challenging. And I want also government to know that lockdown affected us as real parents, but at the same time we have to be ready to teach other people's children. And so it's not as easy as someone could think there. I have to be like now I have to be there to teach my own children, but at the same time I have to teach someone's children. That's if we set up online later, but not yet. So that's the second issue. The first issue is just quick shift from physical learning to online learning. Now we also have to juggle the lockdown, children being at home, and the children of others. The other one is internet connection. It's very expensive. And so we also expect data from the university to be able to run lessons. That is after they have successfully delivered on gadgets, unless they want to hire own gadgets at home. This is a complexity. You may take it lightly, but the complexity that has to be looked into. And most of my colleagues, by the way, I'm the chairperson for all academic staff in public universities in Uganda, the 10 public universities. And so I know the real life situation that is going. It's only Makere that was able to quickly run some kind of, online learning to a substantial level. But most of our universities were really struggling. And of course, they were using Zoom. For us, we had our own system, but it was also limited in its own way. So it is for real that internet penetration and internet connectivity is a problem to us also as teachers. And so we need to be, that needs to be looked into. Of course, Makere at some level did some kind of apportioning of resources quickly to provide for us at least to have some data for those who are teaching from home. Then we haven't done it now. But, and then again, we were, some extent, to a very large extent, all accessing our offices somehow. Now only 10% have access, so I don't know how it's going to be. So we need data also. And then also the other issue is we have to prepare for these children. Remember, when they come to school, we sort of like put them in the same environment. They're in front of me, and probably I can check on them and see who needs what. Now we have kids at home, everyone in their different environments, requiring different techniques to happen to them. And it's really very difficult. And we have now to teach science online, which is also very, very difficult. Meaning we now have to adapt some kind of attenuated curriculum, a change in curriculum, meaning we have to change a little bit of what we are teaching and change a little bit to put it online. And that's an extra task. And I remember Smakeri had been taken through training. We were developing materials so that students can access them. It's another extra Herculean hard task. And then, of course, with all that, the challenge of adapting subjects to online learning, of course, it's hard. We have to learn to teach science online, which is a whole field of training. And we are looking at ourselves, we are challenged, but let's think about students also who will be listening. It's a very challenging situation. And so the fact is that COVID-19 slowed down the whole entire education system. That's for a fact. From what I said at the beginning, to even from our side as teachers, we had slowed down and maybe to 40, 30%. And what does that mean? Essentially, students are not learning from the quality point of view. They are just, getting involved and yapping here and there, of course. We are online, we are getting materials. But from the quality education point of view, according to me, with this slowdown of up to 40 to 30%, learning is limited. And of course, that undermines education in the outputs at the end of the day. And so at the end of the day, we will see these outputs affecting labor markets. We will see the entire effect, very, very resounding effect on the economy, which is already peripheral. Peripheral means peripheral economy, which is really loose in terms of its labor market, in terms of its economic power, in terms of public infrastructure and governance. It's all loose. And of course, this is exacerbated by our loose planning and management of public affairs. Not to go deep, of course, we seem to be not that very well organized, because this situation of education requires astute public administrators to organize society, but also to move towards pushing for some kind of education aid act, where the issues of illiteracy could be addressed. An education aid act usually is very important after war or after pandemics like this, where inequalities have to be addressed within that act, and also be able to channel resources where they are needed most, and make sure for this particular purpose. And we have the UN Sustainable Development Goal of 2030 to give equitable secondary and post-secondary education, primary education to all citizens of the world. And so you need astute planners, you need very shrewd public administrators who are pro-people, who understand that the nation needs them at this point, not this business of chewing the money, and then make sure that we are organized enough to embark on this challenge path. It's going to even be worse.
Yes.
And I have been trying to learn this whole thing and study it in tandem with the post-World War strategies of Germany, for example, which was almost destroyed, and what they had to do. And we need recovery education post this. We're talking about this here and there, and it's too much. Everyone is rambling, it's not being done. But we better sit down. We need post-pandemic education, which is recovery education, which is pregnant in skills. We needed a review of our curriculum. We have no time to waste. These children have to gain some of the skills that they were going to gain after secondary in secondary. We need to
Yes.
bring some technical subjects on board in the secondary education and primary education. We need a review. And this is a chance. And maybe finally, wars and pandemics will always be there. And these all lights are not be on the lighter note. It's an opportunity for us to review ourselves and recast our education system and look inside and be more Pan-African than before. And of course, account to each other. I thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. You've concluded on a very statesmanship note. If I can now cross to Dr. Jova. Doctor, you've heard from the students and we have just heard from the instructor. They have put some requests, they have punched holes in the government response, and they have also proposed some of the things that could be done. But of course, from where they are standing, a lot of them go to the students, the pupils, and then the instructors. But now from the angle of a proprietor, the teachers are actually telling you that you need to avail them with the gadgets and the data and teaching tools such that they do their work. So from your end, first, has there been any sort of government response to support you as proprietors or investors in the education sector? Two, if yes, how effective? If no, what are some of those interventions that government would make to enable you get back on your feet and maybe to bring back some of the people you stated that you fear they may not return?
Yeah, government hasn't given us any assistance. The assistance we had was in rumors, and all of us are aware of that money was stolen, that was meant for teachers and private schools. So we haven't got anything. And really, the education system has to change. We have to go online. And everyone is saying online, online. But for sure, when you look at the reality, 80% of the children, the school going age of children and the youth are in rural areas. But when we talk about online, it's like everyone can access the gadgets to use online. For example, I have some schools which are located in slums, like slums of Mbarara, Seni. We put up the program which is running now as me, as Ebenezer. We wanted to go online, but those other schools can't go online. They don't know even what a computer looks like. So I think we need, and when the government says there has to be radios, there has to be TVs, the student has already talked about it. Where is the electricity? Where is the money to buy the cells for these children to listen to the radios? And even if they are listening to the radios, these parents are illiterate. Who is going to help them out in their work? So I think the government has to come up with a strategy where it comes, because education is key. Unless they hope to boost education, then I think at the end of it all, the nation is going down. For the teachers, for me, I'm looking at the impact in four categories. I'm looking at the financial, the beneficiaries, the process and development of challenges, challenges. But when you look at the lockdown, for example, the people are not working. Where is the money going to come from to support these children? My schools run from nursery to high school. But look at these children who are in nursery. Children have missed 2 years, 2 good years. How are they going to cover it up? It is a challenge. We have had to hire some consultants, curriculum consultants, to break down the content that is, simple enough for these children to understand and to have something. As one of the colleagues has said, we have to change the curriculum of our education, so that it's skill-based. Because if it was skill-based, even now that they are in their homes, it would help. But now it's theoretical. We have to teach theory. The children have, unless, to replace the four word type of learning is going to take time because of our setting. Yeah. So I think the government has come in. A lot of money has been channeled to different things. But what about education? What about education? What are they thinking about it? Look here. After some time, in a few years to come, you are going to have half-baked citizens, because they are going to skip, they are going, see how the classes were, the schools were opened in a staggered manner. And even before, there is a problem. I don't know how we are going to do the syllabus coverage, but the government has to inject in money. For example, now, as you are saying, how are we going to maintain our teachers, the human resource? Since the government is paying the teachers in government schools, why can't it get something for these teachers in private schools?
I've seen them on the list of Right Honorable Nabanja, and she said we should watch our phones to learn tomorrow. Maybe it's coming. There are 100,000.
How I pray it can come, 100,000. You have a family of 10, 100,000. So I think those in government need to think and see how to help. Now, when we are looking at how to maintain our human resource. We are looking at how can we we are looking at how to uphold the education system. But how is a rural person, a rural parent, going to be able to pay school fees for these children? How is this person who has been in school on those kiosks which have been dismantled, how are those people going to get money to pay school fees? I think government, since it brought UPE and, it has, I think, now to expand it so that the children really don't miss out. When we look at, for example, like now, the government, URA, KCCA is on annex. It wants property rates, taxes. It wants, where are we going to get that money to pay? Because when you look at the private schools, we are contributing, a big percentage to the education system. But government has closed its eyes as far as private schools are concerned. And yet we are really contributing a lot. When you look at these other universities, some of us who are studying, when we were studying, we had only Makerere University. But look at what the private institutions are contributing to the education system. Let the government also get money to help us out. Let it have, a financial pool where it's going to help these private universities, private institutions, so that we remain in business. We remain providing services. And when you look around, we are providing really quality services. There is another professor, the doctor has said, talked about it, the quality of education. You think of the child in the village. The other time, the Honorable Minister of Education said children of 5 years can go to P1, which means now the children of 7 years will start P1. When they haven't seen the blackboard for 7 years, it's going to be a lot of work. And remember, teachers also are so discouraged, are in a bad shape, really. So I'm praying that those who are concerned, they should look at supporting private educational institutions. The other time they told the banks to restructure our loans. But you should imagine what happened. They restructured the loans, and the loans went like 3 times what they were. Let government come up and help us. We are helping it. Let it help us. Then let it waive off the taxes. Really, they are asking for property rate. Where do we get money to pay property taxes? Where do we get money to pay? You know, there's file returns. We file what? 0. And will they even accept 0? They will come again for us. So really, we are in jeopardy, but God will help us out.
Thank you very much. I think you have been very clear on identifying where the challenges are and proposing what interventions can be made. We are now actually moving towards the end of this discussion, and I think going forward, we are now going to be speaking in terms of our way forward and what can be done, which already we have hinted on several things, but maybe emphasizing it more as we finish. But to you, Your Excellency Mariam Ichulet, in one of the roundtable discussions we had here, we hosted the good president of Uganda Matters, His Excellency Cassius David, and he intimated that as student leaders, you had organized yourselves and I think petitioned the Prime Minister on matters welfare of students, both international and local, who are stuck in different places. I would like to hear from you as the chairperson of Wosa University. Are you aware of that, and how far has that gone?
Yes, definitely. As guild presidents in all institutions of higher learning, during the lockdown, we came together to brainstorm on how we could help our fellow students who are stranded in different places. And we collected different names of students who are stranded, and we're even still collecting them as we speak, and proceeded to write a very compelling letter appealing to the office of the Prime Minister, Right Honorable, through the Right Honorable Nabanja, to equally consider our fellow students in this COVID-19 relief, which seems to consider everyone else except the students who are facing really devastating challenges. And we are still awaiting a response from her. We are still appealing to her office to please look at the young people, look at the students, look at the people who look up to you for help, for support, who are inspired by such people. So we are still awaiting feedback from them. And even when her list was released, we did not see our students there. But when we last got communication from her office, it was said that she is going to be reviewing the letter and will be getting back to us. We are hopeful and we are still awaiting that communication. But even while we are pushing across the issues of the stranded students, I would also like to really bring this home strongly, that while we are looking unto the government, and rightly so, because they are the government, we fund them, we support them, we look up to them, and they too are obligated to support us. We need to really equally embrace interdisciplinary action where different people from different calibers in the country come together to support the nation to recover, because as we speak, we are in a very sorry state. In institutions, we need to have a massive vaccination plan. We need to look at it quite strongly, not only vaccinating the lecturers or the medical students and all. We need to find a way of having all students in all learning institutions, right from pre-primary to higher learning, vaccinated, so that even when we can open up, we have a scenario where we are able to access education in a safe and secure way. And we also need to look at institutions which have been for so long providing scholarships to students. Very many of my fellow students have lost different scholarships, have failed to apply for different scholarships because of the current scenario. We find that someone has not finished their final exams for first year, second year, they don't have a transcript, and hence are not eligible to be awarded a scholarship in different aspects. And very many of these students have been highly dependent on those different scholarships. We call upon these organizations to find a way of adjusting their selection criteria of different students. Our friends in Makerere who had not even started their exams, in Bara University, we had not finished our exams. So for very many of these scholarships, which were highly anticipated, very many people do not qualify. So we are calling upon every single institution, every single body within the country to support the students, support the government, and see how we can put into place systems that are actually working and are directly streamlined to have a recovery in all the different areas that we have let go of.
Thank you very much for still very passionate appeal there. Petra, welcome back. Sorry, we had lost you for a moment. And maybe if we can now come to you. We have heard and we know that in communities, there has been an upsurge in teenage pregnancies and early marriages. And you have already described some of the challenges that you are going through. You are in VAC, but also those who are still in high school. So how is it among your peers? Which conversations are happening? Is there a hope that when eventually school opens, people will be there and they will attend school? What is happening? Are there any NGOs or are there any government programs that are reaching out to you to appeal to you to remain focused and still keep reading and learning and preparing to go back to school? And if not, how can we help? How can the country help? How can whoever is watching here be able to help to see that we don't lose an entire generation?
Thank you so much, sir. Sorry about the loss of time. So currently what's happening among the youth, what's happening among teenagers, what's happening among people at home. So currently everyone is at home and they're all glued to their phones. Then they're talking about what's happening, what series are we watching this time. They don't have hope about going to school. Actually, it's a bit disappointing that when they were sent back home, many of them were busy celebrating, saying, yeah, let's go back and enjoy. So currently the generation.
Oh, sorry, your network is breaking. Maybe you could turn off the video and we say we don't need the audio. You're making a very critical point there.
So what I was saying is that currently the teenagers and the youth are so disappointed. Currently, many teenagers and many youth are so disappointed with the education system. They are so disappointed with their country and they don't see any hope. What's going on? They're talking about what's next. They're talking about football matches. They're talking about series. They don't have any hope. They don't have any future. Because you see, in this second wave, in the second lockdown, I don't see any intervention from the schools. The schools have also given up. They don't know how to treat these children. You realize that in this second lockdown, even the parents are reluctant to provide the data for Zoom or data to attend these meetings on Google Meet or anywhere, because they all don't see a future. I believe that the government and maybe the educationists and the experienced people like the ones we have on this platform today probably can give a hand and try to talk to these children through maybe radio shows, maybe talk shows like this, and they try to bring back focus, to try to show them that even after this start, there is going to be a future. After our war, things finally return to sanity, and if you lost it, you lost it. So I believe that this is where we need to have these children to be mentored, to be talked to. I think even the parents have a role to play. We realize that during this season, despite the fact that yes, we are going to comply and say resources are not there, radios, televisions, and data is not there, but even despite these deficiencies, the parents, the elders in society should take an obligation and try to talk to these children, maybe through television. You realize that currently the government, the first wave of the COVID lockdown, they used to pass around advertisements on television. They could tell the girls, please focus and stuff. But I've not seen those advertisements yet on television. Yet that's where most youth and children are spending most of their time. They're spending most of their time glued on these televisions. So I believe maybe the government can take use of that and use experienced people. They use educationists, they use teachers, they use these mentors and counselors to try to talk to these children and tell them and bring them back to focus and show them that there is a future. But then I still want to believe, as Dr. Kamunyu said, that there is a big challenge of education right now, because even before this surge came up, children were already dismantled. They were already facing lots of challenges. It was hard for them to concentrate. Girls were being disturbed, even in school. Now imagine we are out of school, they are being talked to by very many different people. So my suggestion would be that we need children to be talked to. Let's not only look at what are they losing from school, because they are losing enough, but let's also look at the moral obligation. Let's also look at the psychological and the emotional changes they are going through. Let's try to talk to these people. Let's use this media not only for education, because currently you realize that there are many classes going on. You go on television, there's a class for P5, there's a class for P7, but let's also get a segment to try to talk to these people. And I believe this is the time the parents have to play a part. Parents tend to say they are busy. They leave home very early and come back very late. But I believe if they still want their children, they should not only buy for them data, because who knows where they log on to. You give a child data to attend a class, but they end up going and logging onto different websites, Facebook, Twitter, and stuff. So I believe it's now the time for the parents, because the teacher's hands are tied. A teacher is going to maybe, in case they even have the means, they're going to attend their lesson, try to teach. But meanwhile, the children who are in class are not even in class. They have just logged on and left the gadget there doing their own stuff. So I want to call upon the parents. It is their time now to save their children. It is their time now to save Uganda, to save the African child, because they are the ones at home. They should put in time, try to talk to these children, and remember that it's not only education, but also the moral upbringing and the way these children are being limited. Also the leaders, the village leaders, they have to come on ground and try to keep these children on check. They should try to to regulate the way these people move. They should try to talk to them, because we are all aware we are stay at home, but that's not happening. People are posting, they are moving from one place to another, and that's why they're facing these challenges. That's why we're getting the teenage pregnancies. So it is my humble request that the whole nation, parents, teachers, leaders, chairpersons, these experienced educationists should come up on board and try to instill morals into these children. Let's not only look at COVID in terms of what we are losing education-wise, but let's also look at what we are losing moral-wise. We are losing innocent souls, we are losing innocent children, and I believe this is something we should come on board and try to solve. And also the fact that these children are telling to forget, the parents also, the conversations they have at home with their children, to try to align them in the line of going back to school. Because currently people are talking business. What's next? You're not going to school, you cannot study Form 5 for 3 years, you don't have that much money. But I believe it's also time we have people talking about the essence of education, and that also brings about the change of curriculum. What was being taught to these children? They're at home, what are they using? The history they were reading, are they using these things of the older men they are reading about to make their history? I believe this is also an eye-opener to the Ugandan education system. Was what you are teaching relevant to these children? Can they use it right now? Because now they're at home. Are they going to be able to use this, the French colonialists are talking them about? So I believe it's also an eye-opener. Was what was being taught in school relevant? Was it, is it beneficial to these children right now? Can they use it for their survival? Because I believe that also brings us to think about what needs to be done. We are fighting for an education system, but was it even relevant in any way? When we get back these children in schools, I believe these people have to get a seat on a round table and they discuss, in case we get another surge like this, will the education system be relevant to the children? Will they be able to survive? Because I believe this has showed us that we need more survival skills, we need practical skills, because we see that people would be maybe now at home trying to establish, trying to do work, but now children at home wondering whether even what they were studying was relevant. And parents are like, why do you have to go back to study something you won't even use? This is what happens actually even after university. Children still refuse to be stuck at home like they are now because the what they were learning was not relevant at all. So I believe it also brings us to discussion of whether what was being taught was relevant and children can use it. So I believe that government, the Ministry of Education, and the educationists should sit down and try to come up with an education system which can be relevant in all situations. Otherwise, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot which is needed in order to bring back sanity. It's going to be an hassle both for the government, parents, and for the children as well. But I believe it's a battle we can fight as long as the government tries its level best. Despite the fact that we are running on a deficit budget, we know education is something which is so important to the growth of our nation, and we are looking at 15 million lives at stake here. So I believe we should try. Everyone should have a play in what is taking place and try to help these children stay in school, stay focused on education, and talk to them, because that's what they need right now. They need someone to talk to them, to make them understand the value and importance of education. Meanwhile, the government should also try to see, is the education worth it? Is there a need for change? Thank you.
Wow, this is the youth roundtable. If this was a physical meeting, I was going to ask that you be given a standing ovation. I think that was a very, very good submission. You are really a testimony of what education can do. Thank you very much, Petra. And you seem to have picked from what Mariam was saying, that we need, she called it a multidisciplinary approach. You have really given us a way forward for almost every sector. Maybe just to throw back something to you, I remember way back when I was still in school, we had clubs like the Young Talk, like the Human Rights and Peace Club. I hope that even among yourselves, you are able to start initiatives such that beyond other stakeholders, you also as peers, because sometimes you may be more comfortable listening to one of you than the senior educators and others. So even among yourselves, if you have an opportunity, for those of you who have smartphones and all that, I think that you need to invoke those clubs and associations to speak to one another through all the platforms that are available. But thank you very much for that very passionate and informed and articulate presentation. I'm very sure the two doctors here are very proud of you. So at this point, we have about 10 minutes to bring this conversation to an end. So each one of us is going to speak for the last time. And here really what we need now is a way forward. What can we do as individuals, as groups, as governments, as the private sector, as the international community? What can we do? We have seen the challenges, we have proposed some way forwards, but maybe let's now have a way of concretizing all this conversation into a holistic. I'm very sure the stakeholders, including the ministry and government generally, and the business sector, civil society, watch this show and they follow and they take notes. So I think I'm going to start with you, Odul, Your Excellency, Odul Felix. All said and done, what can we do now as a country to see that we save the situation?
Well, thank you so much, fellow panelists today. My way forward, I will have it stratified. There are those, what we are dealing with is a health challenge, COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm looking at, if we deal with the problem from the root, then we would prevent all these budding challenges to other sectors, the branches of which education has been not spared. The health intervention I would continue encouraging is mass vaccination. I think that has been overemphasized. I think this is where the magic will be, because COVID is there to stay with us and it is not going to leave us any soon. We should see how do we be safe and continue with business, because currently football is going on and most of us who watch football, the Euros, there is a plan to hold Euro finals and be able to permit 60,000 fans into the stadium. Look at that. How are the Europeans doing it? Can we borrow it? Can we also get ways of having majority of our population vaccinated?
Yeah, thank you, Excellency. Just some guidance. We have about 2 minutes each, so just distill your recommendation.
Okay, thank you. The second one is still the health intervention. Let's prevent the massive spread of this virus, such that we bring it down. Let's adhere to the soaps, wash hands, put on mask, social distance. I believe that will help us so much. In regard to the educational interventions, I personally want to appeal to all stakeholders in education, students, teachers, institutions, community, those are the parents, and then partners. We need really flexibility in education. On waivers or surcharge waivers, we need to deal with this problem as a whole, because once institutions still also ask for the fees which are not there, parents are at home, we are not helping the system. Then for the private players in education, we only have 9 public universities out of the 53. You look at the majority, that happens also in secondary. Therefore, where will they get the money to pay the taxes, just as Doctor was talking? We need those tax waivers. And finally, what I would like to say that this problem we are dealing with, it requires everyone. Petra summarized it. It requires a multi-sectoral approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Dr. Kamunyu, the floor is yours.
Like I told you, the battle now is defeating the pandemic from the point of view of subduing its effects on society, and that will take some time. But in the meantime, from the education point of view, we must look at the plight of over 76% of the rural school-going children And over 65% of the urban going children, out of the section of the urban going children, school going children, who live in poverty. I'm talking about 76% of rural children who may not be having access to internet and all the other aspects of learning tools. And then 65% of the children going to urban schools who live in poverty. They are a priority. They are a source of, they are a very important group that is actually the hope of this country and the hope of Africa. But they are the reason all the economic interventions are being put in place to deliver them from the vagaries of poverty and disease. And what can we do to help them? One, I think, and I'm going to speak in the affirmative because I'm convinced that at this point after the pandemic, we need an education reform that splits education between family and school. Because we overgave a lot to school. And so we made education more expensive, and yet we can't afford. So we can split the education between family and school. And when I say family, I mean informal education, meaning not a curriculum which is mainstream, but a set of to do things that every child must be competent at or must get involved in and be competent at. And that's what we call informal education. Because when I had the guild president talking about education, education is both formal and informal. So we don't separate the two. So when we talk about formal, we are discussing formal education, but we are forgetting informal education, which is also very, very important. In countries like Finland, informal education is very, very key. Being with your mother in the kitchen, teaching you how to prepare burger, how to go through different recipes, and could push you to become the next KFC founder without necessarily going to a formal education system and be able to of course, prepare a living for yourself. We also need to deal with the issue of school dropout, formal education school dropout. They are busy running around either as a result of pregnancies, they will drop out. As a result of a diverted mind, they drop out. And so then they are between 20 and 30%. We need to deal with them. How we deal with them is also a matter of informal education or formalized skilling opportunities. We need to equip staff to quickly adapt to the new era of staff teaching staff. They need equipment, they need gadgets, they need internet, they need to be retooled quickly to engage, to be able to competently engage young people online and teach even science subjects and deliver effectively a blended learning. I'm sorry, I will just, and then we also need competitive parenting. Parenting has, we gave away our children to schools. And parents think the groceries, pick and drop kids. We must go back competitive parenting, whereby a parent, also to a basic, delivers basics of education to their child at home. So they have to, that's why parenting in the developed world is very tough, because there are certain things you must teach a child. And the social worker will come looking out for these things.
Doctor, as you wind up, I hope you are safe, because we have lost you on video, seemingly prematurely. Okay, I think as we wait to get Doctor back, our time is fast spent. Your Excellency Mariam, we could use 2 minutes to summarize your parting shot.
Thank you very much. I would definitely like to push across the concept of One Health. One Health is the knowledge and belief that everybody has a role to play in ensuring that we achieve optimal health outcomes, not only in among human beings, but other environments. And it also brings to our awareness the way different systems interact to bring together the best quality of life that we can have. So having an enabling environment in our homes, our communities, our schools requires all of us to be mindful of our actions. So just as we have been discussing, there is a lot that we expect our government to do to improve the current situation. But we need to equally be realistic. They cannot do it all in real time. They cannot do it at the time that we most need it alone. We need to ensure that different partners are brought on board, different stakeholders are aware of the obligation and unique role that they have to play in ensuring that all the different issues that we are facing can be lessened, can be improved. So I call upon all the different stakeholders in line with from community-based organizations, non-government organizations, telecoms, public and private, to see how they can rally and monopolize resources together, concentrate them, and have a larger impact. When we work in silos, when we work in small cocoons, we may have victories here and there, but it may not be phenomenal. And as we speak now, we need a phenomenal and colossal transformation to bring to reality all the innovations that we would like to have. And I also like to encourage all of us in all our different aspects to actually have a positive mindset, because it's easy for us to be drenched in sorrow and depression, because when we look around it seems like there is no hope. But once we lose that hope and believe that things can get better, then we are leaving our nation to continue in this trajectory of depression, not only economically, socially, politically, but even mentally. So not only can we look onto our institutions, our government, our leaders, we as students, we as young people, even as children, we have a role to play. You find that in homes, we are looking unto our parents to support us. But if you can only imagine the stress that they too are facing. So it's a give and take. It's an exchange of support. It's an exchange of help. So even the government is looking unto the nation, the citizens, to support them. We have seen them coming publicly to ask for resources to facilitate some of their activities. So clearly, we can see that it's an exchange. So I really want all of us not to wait to be called upon, not to wait to receive a letter, not to wait to maybe face a strenuous event ourselves, but to be mindful of all the different things that we can do to improve our society.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. You called it a colossal and
phenomenal transformation.
Yes, and phenomenal transformation. I loved that. Thank you very much. Petra, within 2 minutes, you really spoke in conclusive terms, but if you have anything more in about a minute or so that you want us to know, please.
Well, thank you so much, sir. So we have to come to the fact, we have to accept reality. The truth is that we are here arguing out for data and gadgets, but the truth is that there are some parts of Uganda which do not have even electricity. And what are we going to do for those children in those areas? Are they going to be left out of education? Are they not going to go to school? No, they have to go to school. So this is my humble appeal to the parents, my humble appeal to the people in society, to the teachers. As Dr. said, is that there is not only formal education, it's not the only type of education. Let us ensure that these children are safe. Let us provide them with a safe space at home. Parents, take on the responsibility to care for your children. The government, yes, we have many requests. We need this data, we need these gadgets, but they cannot provide those things in this limited period of time. We are arguing for these equipments, but even hospitals which are saving lives don't have the oxygen tanks and stuff. What means that it's now our personal responsibility as the elders in society, as the parents, to take care of these children. Let's try as much as we can to engage them. Let's try as much as we can to keep them busy, to keep them occupied, and to try. We are arguing that they need to be.
Okay, our young sister seems to have a network issue, but I think fair enough, she has made her point. So, Dr. Jova, you have the honor of summing up this conversation with your parting shots, which will also be the final parting shots.
Yeah, thank you. Although the lockdowns are effective in controlling the spread of the pandemic worldwide, they are not good for education and the economy. In case of Uganda, education has been one of the first casualties. And I think we need to come up with some mitigation to make sure that the education sector is not so poorly hit how it has been hit. For example, we need education in the way forward. We need the education emergency resource pool so that the education in the face of this pandemic ought not to be the first, to be a casualty, but it should be the first line of defense. There is need to support the sector through dedicated resource pool, stimulus package to enable it, wade through the emergencies, not limited to loan bailouts, enforcement of SOPs, procurement of study materials, and case management at the individual level. Then another thing that should be, we need to improve access to learning technologies. The digital divide in Uganda highlights the enormous inequality gap, the difficulty in accessing digital technologies, and the deficit digital literacy skills between the privileged few and the vulnerable many should be narrowed to enable our children access learning materials with less hindrances. As I had already talked about it, the people in the rural setting and the majority poor. Then we need, a mind shift in the way we teach, in the teaching and learning process. There is need for learning, there is need for institutions to help the teachers in learning, in achieving digital literacy skills. Many of the teachers, they really don't know how to use computers. They are not computer literate. So that one, the government, the schools need to put a strategy in place to make sure the teachers are computer literate. Then there is need for an all sector stimulus package. There is a need to revamp key sectors of the economy to reduce poverty rates. As the doctor has said, schools were going to ask for school fees, but where are parents going to get the money? There has been people have lost jobs, there has been unemployment. All these have left parents in a bad shape. So there is a need to create, there is a need for creating alternatives to help these people, to give a startup, not of 100,000, but to give a startup capital for people to see how to survive and keep their children in school. There is also a need for psychosocial support services. There is a need to put in place psychosocial support mechanisms to reach to the young people and the most vulnerable groups like the elderly, the terminally ill, who are yet to come to terms with the reality of this epidemic. Many people are suffering psychologically. Some have nervous breakdowns because of the pandemic. So they need to be supported. They need counseling. And nationwide lockdown left approximately 15 million learners out of school. The UN estimates that the pandemic impact in the education sector will be greatly felt by low, emphasis, by low and average income households in both private and public schools. As the pandemic continues, education in poorer areas will be hit hardest due to underlying problems. It is therefore critical for all stakeholders to support the education sector in order to avert this crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jova.
I didn't know my video was not on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but at least we had you loud and clear. Wow, this has been quite a conversation, the youth round table. This brings us to the end of our conversation. And I'd like to thank you, my panel. You have been a wonderful panel, passionate, informed, and incisive. Thank you, Your Excellency Oduru Felix, for sparing time to share with us your experience. Thank you, Your Excellency Mariam Ichilet Arikosi, for the passionate presentation. Our young sister Petra Namatogu, we are very proud of you. Keep engaging, keep engaging. Thank you, Dr. Jova Biarugaba, for taking out time to share with us your experience, your sharings. This conversation could not be complete without hearing from you who have invested or who are investors in the education sector. And thank you, Dr. Kamunyu Deus, though he left prematurely. I hope that is okay. Thank you very much for being the philosopher of the panel and giving us historical and wide-ranging perspectives. To you, the viewers, thank you for sticking with us. This is the Youth Roundtable that airs on CIVICspaceTV every Wednesday from 2 to 4. Please follow us on our platforms. We are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, we are on YouTube for these conversations that happen on a weekly basis. And feel free to send in your questions, to send in your comments, and engage such that these conversations keep happening. Nelson Mandela is reported to have said that education, this education that we are discussing today, is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. This means as we focus on health, as we focus on security, all our conversations, all our actions need to be cognizant of this powerful weapon that will eventually get us out of all the troubles that we have. I remain Matanda Baker, your moderator for God and my country. Bye.